In the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, where the real has always been intertwined with imagination, stands São Miguel, an island of mists and enchantment. For centuries, navigators traced its outlines and names on maps that combine myth and geography. Forged by fire and shaped by time, its impressive lakes symbolize the intersection between the forces of nature and the power of human imagination. Sete Cidades, Fogo and Furnas, remarkable landscapes, guardians of stories that still echo between hills and craters. Come and discover them. Come and discover Portugal with us. Please like, subscribe and leave your comment. Your support and opinions are very important to us. Thank you. São Miguel is the largest island in the Azores archipelago, with an area of 745 square kilometers, and is also the largest island in Portugal. Together with the island of Santa Maria, it forms the western group of this archipelago in the Atlantic. Along its 66 kilometers of length stretch several volcanic complexes that are visible landmarks that recall the beginnings of its geological history. The island was completely formed as a result of multiple volcanic eruptions. The initial small island was probably born from the Nordeste volcanic complex on the eastern side around 4 million years ago, which eventually grew as a result of additional eruptions in the Povoação volcanic complex 3.2 million years ago. The growth of this primordial island moved westwards a million years ago with the eruptive activity of the Furnas volcanic complex. "700,000 years later, at what is now the western end of São Miguel, the eruptions of the Sete Cidades volcanic complex gave rise to a second island. The activity of the Fogo and Picos volcanic complexes, recorded over the last 180,000 years, would end up forming a unique island, joining the primitive island on the east side with the Sete Cidades volcanoes. These events made a visible mark on the physical landscape of São Miguel, namely through the formation of the many magnificent lakes that dot what is also known as the Green Island. The three largest and most iconic lakes are Sete Cidades, Fogo and Furnas, which are a window onto a world of geological and natural wonders that have populated the imagination of Azoreans from an early age. The Lake of Sete Cidades, 7 cities, is perhaps the most famous natural setting in the Azores, located at the top of an enormous volcanic caldera on the western end of the island of São Miguel. The 7 Cities volcano was formed as a result of multiple eruptive events over thousands of years and is therefore classified as a polygenetic volcano. Its huge, almost circular caldera developed as a result of eruptions around 36,000 years ago, which caused the successive collapse of its various slopes. The last recorded eruption in this caldera took place at 1439 at the Caldera Seca pumice cone, which is one of the eruptive centers located within the caldera. With a diameter of around 5.3 kilometers and a maximum depth of 630 meters, it is home to the largest freshwater lake in the Azores archipelago, the Lake of Sete Cidades. Seen from above, the lake appears to be divided into two, the Blue Lagoon and the Green Lagoon, although it is a single body of water. The distinct coloring is due to the greater depth of the blue, the higher concentration of algae in the green, and the reflection of the vegetation and sky on either side. The whole area is part of a protected landscape which is included in the Natura 2000 network and was voted one of the 7 natural wonders of Portugal for its ecological value and unique beauty. The slopes of the Caldera are home to rare endemic species of Azorean flora such as the Azores juniper, the Angelica, the Macaronesian holly, the St. Dabiox heath, the Erica azorica and the Lysimachia azorica, as well as some species of moss. This lake is also a passage area for migratory birds and nesting ground for birds endemic to the Azores, such as the blackbird, the São Miguel goldcrest and the Azorean starling. It covers an area of 4.45 square kilometers and has a maximum depth of 33 meters, making it the largest natural surface freshwater reservoir in the Azores. This is also home to one of the most remarkable engineering works of the first half of the 20th century in Portugal, the so-called Sete Cidades Tunnel, which began construction on 1 October 1930 and was inaugurated 7 years later in 1937. Spanning more than 1,200 meters, this tunnel tears straight through the mountain, linking the northwestern end of the lake to Grota do Alqueve in the parish of Mosteiros, allowing for the control of excess accumulated rainwater and, at the same time, a crossing to the opposite side of the elevation, closer to the sea. On its west bank is the town of Sete Cidades, 7 cities, but what is the origin of this peculiar name associated with the town, the volcano, and the lake? The answer is linked to centuries of myths and legends, intertwined with the evolution of geographical knowledge, the development of cartography from the Middle Ages onwards, and the Great Atlantic navigations. The name 7 Cities evokes a mysterious medieval legend of obscure origins. According to it, during the Muslim invasion of the Iberian Peninsula in the 8th century, 7 Visigothic Christian bishops fled in boats across the Atlantic Sea from Portugal, present-day Porto, towards the west, and found a distant island where they founded 7 cities full of wealth. This legendary island, called Antillia or the Island of the 7 Cities, appeared on ancient nautical maps, often drawn as a large rectangular island with 7 locations marked on it, and inflamed the European imagination for centuries. The first known representation of this island appears on Joane Pizzigano's map of 1424, where Antillia is depicted in a rectangular shape with 7 coves, possibly representing the mythical 7 cities. The island of Antillia, along with the smaller island of Roilo to the west and sometimes the island of Satanás to the north, continued to be depicted on dozens of charts throughout the 15th century and into the early 16th century. The origin of its name has been linked by researchers such as Armando Cortesão to a derivation of the Portuguese Antillia, meaning island situated in front of or opposite mainland Portugal. Others, however, suggest that its etymology may be older, possibly being related in meaning to the name Aprositus, the inaccessible one, a name attributed by Ptolemy to one of the mythical Fortunate Isles. Belief in the existence of Antillia motivated several expeditions sponsored by the Portuguese crown. In 1475, King Afonso V of Portugal granted the Knight Fernãoteles rights to the 7 cities and any other populated islands he discovered in the western Atlantic. In 1486, Ferdinand van Ulmen, a Flemish navigator living on the Azorean island of Terceira, received authorization from King John II of Portugal to lead an expedition in search of Antillia. Van Ulmen teamed up with João Afonso do Estreito, who lived in Funchal, Madeira, to finance and organize the trip. However, there are no concrete records of the expedition having taken place, or of its success in discovering the island. With the advance of explorations of the Atlantic and the discovery of America by Europeans, the image of Antillia gradually disappeared from maps and was replaced by the territories actually found. Curiously, the name ended up being given to other real lands. The Caribbean Antilles owe their name to this legend. According to Azorean tradition, this legend ended up being intertwined with the local history of Sete Cidades. It is said that Portuguese explorers, after many unsuccessful searches, finally spotted a magical island that appeared and disappeared among the mists of the Atlantic. When they disembarked, they found it mysteriously uninhabited, no sign of the legendary bishops or their people. They took possession of that lush land in the name of Portugal and in memory of the enchanted land of Sete Cidades, baptized the great volcanic Caldera there with that name. Thus, the fabulous lost island lives on today in the name of the lake and the parish of Sete Cidades, 7 cities, perpetuating the echo of that ancient myth at the top of the Azorean volcano. The Azorean popular imagination, always immensely rich, also contains two legends that try to explain the formation of the lake of Sete Cidades and its two colors, blue and green. One of the versions tells the story of a princess, daughter of the kings of this enchanted land of the Azores, who strolled through the fields every day, enjoying the flowers, the birdsong, and the sea on the horizon. During one of these walks, she met a shepherd, the son of humble and simple people, who was out in the fields grazing his flock. They talked for hours, realizing that they both liked the same things. From this meeting, a deep love was born, and the princess and the shepherd met every day in the green meadows of the island, dreaming of a life together. However, the king and queen had already arranged a marriage for their daughter with a prince from a neighboring kingdom. On learning of the romance with the shepherd, the king immediately forbade them, granting a final farewell meeting. At the moment of their final meeting, the blue-eyed princess and the green-eyed shepherd cried so profusely that 2 ponds were born at their feet, each the color of their eyes. Another version of the legend tells of a king who lived in this island and regretted never having any children. The pain made him sad, bitter, and cruel. One night, the king saw a very bright star above him in the sky, which gradually descended and ended up materializing in the form of a beautiful woman. This woman promised the king a daughter as beautiful as the sun, but she made it a condition that his cruelty end and that he be patient. He would have to build a palace surrounded by 7 cities encircled by insurmountable bronze walls. There, the princess would be kept for 30 years, out of sight and out of mind. The monarch readily accepted the agreement, but after 28 years, he couldn't contain himself any longer. Despite knowing the harmful consequences of his action, he decided to advance on the walls to destroy them. As soon as he began his invasion, the earth shook violently and the sea swallowed up the entire island. In the end, only the 9 islands of the Azores and the princess's palace remained, transformed into the lake of Sete Cidades, divided between the green part, like her dress, and the blue part, the color of her shoes. With such legendary heritage, it's no wonder that whether shrouded in mist or under the sun, the lake of Sete Cidades is seen as an enchanted place where nature and fantasy meet. The Lagoa do Fogo, Lake of Fire, is another natural wonder of São Miguel. It is located high up in the volcanic massif of the Aguadpau Mountains, practically in the heart of the island, being its highest crater lake, resting at an altitude of 575 meters inside an oval caldera measuring around 3 kilometers by 2.5 kilometers in diameter. There are approximately 40 water lines here, 18 of which flow directly into the lake, which occupies the crater of the Volcano of Fire, the youngest volcano on the island, formed approximately 15,000 years ago and whose last recorded eruption dates back to 1563. This historic eruption in the 16th century was violent and spewed ash and pumice over much of the island, justifying the name Lake of Fire associated with the volcano and caldera. After the fire was extinguished, the marble remained. The collapsed crater gave way to a serene lake of deep blue waters, surrounded by steep slopes of unspoiled greenery. Since 1974, the entire area of Lagoa do Fogo has been a nature reserve, which has preserved one of the most untouched environments in the Azores. The descent to the shores of this lake, where there are no roads or buildings, gives the sensation of going back in geological time. The surrounding landscape is dominated by lush native vegetation. Laurel forests with Azores laurel, Azores blueberry, Erica azorica and Azorean laurustinus cover the slopes, along with giant ferns and other endemic plants that color the crater green. This rich flora provides shelter for various birds, such as the so-called Azorean goshawk, which is actually a common buzzard, and the yellow-legged gull, which frequently fly over the lake. Low mists often enter the caldera, shrouding everything in mystery, a reminder that this dormant volcano still dominates the local climate. On clear days, however, from the nearby viewpoint, we can see Lagoa do Fogo in all its wild splendor, with the intense blue of the waters contrasting with the green of the mountains. This impressive view has earned this lake yet another accolade. The small volcanic beach on its shores was voted one of the 7 wonders of Portugal in the wild beach category. Although Lagoa do Fogo lacks the same baggage of fantastic legends as its sisters, it does have its own aura of respect and awe. The ancient people of São Miguel were well aware of the destructive power of this volcano and passed on stories about columns of flames and ash that turned day into night in times gone by. The name of the lake is in itself a cultural legacy, keeping alive the memory of the eruptions that molded the land and signaling the sacred and dangerous nature of the mountain. Today, Lagoa do Fogo is appreciated above all for its natural purity. To contemplate this lake is to experience the encounter between the land that once burned in the furnace of a volcano and the peace of the waters that now cover it, a truly unforgettable experience. Lagoa das Furnas lies at the bottom of the verdant Furnas caldera in the eastern sector of São Miguel, a region famous for its geothermal activity. It's a place where volcanism is not just a geological past, but an integral part of everyday life. On the shores of this lake we can see fumaroles and bubbling calderas releasing hot vapors from the earth. The lake itself occupies a large part of the crater of the Furnas volcano, one of the island's most active volcanoes. The last eruption took place in 1630. Surrounded by high slopes covered in Atlantic forest and cryptomeria, Lagoa das Furnas impresses with its serene yet lively landscape. The tranquil water contrasts with the boiling fumaroles at its edges. On the south shore of the lake stands the Chapel of Our Lady of Victories, built in the 19th century in a revivalist style with neo-Romanesque and neo-Gothic elements. It was built by José do Canto following a vow made when his wife, Maria Guilhermina, fell seriously ill. It was inaugurated in 1886 and features elements of great beauty and fine carving, such as a jasper image on its high altar and a series of stained glass windows illustrating the life of the Virgin Mary from her birth to the Assumption. A blanket of lush vegetation surrounds the lake, with hills painted in all shades of green and historic botanical gardens nearby. This harmony of water, land and vegetation makes Lagoa das Furnas a place of great ecological and landscape value. Around the lake, the town of Furnas flourishes as a spa resort, taking advantage of the iron and sulphurous waters that spring from the ground. For the people of São Miguel, Furnas is also synonymous with thermal springs and gastronomy thanks to its volcanic riches. On the shores of the lake, the hot steaming ground has been used for centuries to cook the famous cozido das furnas, a meat and vegetable stew that is placed in pots and buried in the steaming mouths to slowly cook with the heat of the earth. From this perfect symbiosis between people and volcano came a unique delicacy. The stew has an unmistakable flavor, enriched by sulphurous vapors, and has become an emblematic dish of Azorean cuisine. Every week, dozens of locals and restaurants take advantage of the 56 geothermal cavities available to make this delicacy. It is also in these steaming fumaroles in their hot sulphurous waters that corn cobs, known locally as socos de milho, are cooked, which are an attraction for visitors to the town of Furnas. Few places in the world illustrate the integration of human culture with natural forces so well. In Furnas, the volcano has literally become a cooking oven and part of the local identity. As you might expect, such a peculiar setting has given rise to legendary stories passed down from generation to generation. The legend of Lagoa das Furnas tells us that long before the lake existed, there was a prosperous village in that valley where people lived happily, with parties and abundance, almost without working. One day, a young villager noticed something strange. The water in the spring was salty as seawater, a bad omen, and the fish were jumping out of the stream and dying on the shore. Worried, he warned the locals that misfortune was approaching, but nobody listened, except for his grandfather. Shortly afterwards, the boy and his grandfather climbed the highest peak around and saw on the horizon, emerging from the mist, the enchanted island of 7 cities. Knowing the legend, the old man recognized the sign and tried to warn the village that great dangers were on the way. However, the rest of the villagers continued to dance and celebrate, ignoring the warnings. The young man and his grandfather, fearing the worst, decided to go away for a few days, taking the cattle with them. When they returned, they found an astonishing transformation. The entire village had disappeared, swallowed up by the earth, and in its place shone the calm waters of a new lake. A sudden volcanic cataclysm buried the town, creating the Lagoa das Furnas. According to legend, the villagers didn't die out. They still live under the waters today. The bubbles of volcanic gas that can be seen emerging to the surface are the result of their underground cooking, and the fumaroles smelling of sulfur and cornbread are the chimneys of their furnaces hidden at the bottom of the lake. This legend, which is both tragic and marvelous, is a poetic way for people to explain the violent nature of volcanoes. It also links Furnas to the myth of 7 cities. The appearance of the enchanted island on the horizon as an omen reinforces that in Azorean culture, Atlantic fables and local experience go hand in hand. Today, Lagoa das Furnas is a place where science and tradition coexist. Geologists closely monitor the volcano's activity, while the inhabitants continue to cook in its fumaroles and tell curious visitors ancient stories. Thank you for discovering Portugal with us. If you liked the video, please click on the like button and subscribe to the channel to follow our new releases.